Gaining the most out of retirement isn't just about the numbers inside of your retirement plan. In today's video, we're going to talk about 5 truly transformational ideas that will help you maximize your retirement outside of just the numbers. These ideas have served me incredibly well in my life, and I'm hoping they'll do the same for you. The first one being, think in terms of times, not years. Now, some might think it's a bit morbid to think about the end of your life. However, it's an inevitability for all of us, and I think in our day-to-day lives, when we are caught up worrying about pointless things, like the latest 2-week breaking news stories, we often forget the big picture. And ultimately, our life is defined by that big picture. For perspective, let's look at someone who is currently 60 years of age. In this example, we're going to use a longer life expectancy of age 90. Seeing your life laid out as simply as the diagram on the screen can right off the bat be quite impactful. There isn't necessarily an abundance of time left. Again, I don't say this negatively. I say this to drive home the importance of using the time you have left well. In light red, I have the last decade of this person's life highlighted to note something called the marginal decade. Most people aren't healthy and able one day and then pass away the next day. There's a decline that eventually leads towards demise in which they don't feel healthy nor able anymore. The marginal decade isn't a guarantee, but is common for most. And so the person in this example has 30 years left, maybe 20 to 25 good ones. But what if we think in terms of times rather than years? On average, you'll see approximately 5 more presidents of the United States. That's it. Now, based on the circus that is politics, maybe that's not such a bad thing. Let's say you swim in the ocean, however, once per year. You've probably got 20 to 30 more swims left. Let's say you read 5 books a year. Well, pick them wisely because at most you'll read 150 more books. Now we can go down the list. Different things matter to different people. Let's say that you love to downhill ski. Now I am a huge health enabler. I think that just about anyone can be the 80-year-old still running marathons that we so often see in the news, but only if you're intentional and work for it. Let's say that you ski 3 times per year and are only fit enough to downhill ski until you reach age 70. Well, you have 30 more trips to the slopes. Now, here's one that really hits home for most. During the first 18 years of your children's life, they spent roughly 90% of the time they will spend with you. They see you every day, and so if you're 60 years old, you've probably spent north of 95% of the total time you have with your kids. You're at the tail end. Cherish the times that you have left with them. The number of times we have left to experience certain things is quite small even in a 90-year life, let alone if that's cut short. Keep this in mind the next time you're living one of these experiences. Idea number 2 is something I call the safety gap. Now, this is an idea that can be applied to anyone at any age, but let's specifically look at a retiree. For clients that we work with, our team generally wants to know 3 different income targets. The first is their essential spending need. And I don't mean truly essential that would cause you to live in a van down by the river and live off dog food. I mean essential in terms of maintaining a reasonable but not excess lifestyle in retirement. From there, I want to know your discretionary goal. This would be the added budget to add to your retirement experiences, like travel or dining out regularly or home upgrades. Then finally, what is your spending ceiling? What income would you feel you couldn't spend without doing so wastefully? Meaning that if things went really well in your retirement and you were able to raise your income, how much more could you spend? How much more would you actually spend? I then want to take each of these income targets and reframe them inside of your retirement plan. What does your life look like if you were constrained to any one of these points? Really take some time to consider this. Money does provide an added level of happiness, but only fractionally. If you were constrained due to economic conditions and were only able to cover the most reasonable essentials, would you deem that a massive failure within inside of your retirement? What if you were only able to cover half of the discretionary expense load? From a probability of success standpoint, on the left-hand side of the graph, you can see the likelihood of hitting certain goals is high, but is different for each level. This is to be expected. For instance, on the aggressive spending side, this person has a 75% chance that their plan will generate more income than they could reasonably spend. Now, if we frame your plan in this way, that's a pretty good result. But traditional retirement planning will look at this situation quite a bit differently. it would say that you only have an 88% chance of reaching the main goal, which should be your essential plus discretionary goal. Well, 88% doesn't give us super warm and fuzzy feelings. And so because of this, this couple might continue to work until that number's higher. Now note here that they have the maximum probability of hitting their essential goal. Essentially, Social Security for the long run will cover the majority of this goal. Now it's interesting here that depending on which way we frame their retirement, we feel different about their retirement. And this is because context matters. For instance, how do you define a failure in your retirement? What is the number one thing you're trying to obtain in retirement? I believe a substantial amount of peace of mind can be obtained if you just simply reframe things differently. For instance, if you were forced to just live off of your essential income goal, would this mean your retirement was a complete failure to you? For some, the answer might be yes, but for many, I guess the answer is no. Here's a valuable exercise. List out what your life and hobbies would look like if you were constrained to that essential budget. When I've personally done this, life doesn't look that bad. Most of the things I love to do barely cost anything. Walking and enjoying the company of my spouse and my dogs is completely free. Exercise is free, especially if you already have the equipment. Now, sure, I won't be able to upgrade my mountain bike to the latest new model when I'm on an essential budget. Woe is me. Books are near free. I already have a guitar, so playing the guitar is free. Most of the things I love to do cost next to nothing, and I'm guessing if you went through this exercise, you would find a similar message. The thing that is incredibly valuable that an essential budget gives you is time and freedom. And for most people, that's ultimately what we're searching for in retirement. Nobody to tell us what to do, where to be, how to be. Now, I'm not saying there's anything wrong with wanting more. Wealth can amplify all of these hobbies and open the door for other things like travel. But going through this example as an exercise in something called negative visualization, if we are reasonably comfortable with the worst case scenario, then why do we wrap ourselves into a stress ball worrying about a 5% decline in the market? Pretty simply, most people put themselves through way more pain thinking about the negative scenarios than those negative scenarios would actually be. The next idea illustrates why seizing the beginning phase of your retirement is so important. It's an idea called maximum enjoyment points. Consider the maximum enjoyment you are able to get each year of your life. Think about this like a point system, and each year has a theoretical maximum number of enjoyment points that you can earn. Well, not every year is created equal in your life, and the main catalyst for this is health. The stronger your health, the higher your theoretical ceiling of enjoyment. For instance, taking money out of the equation, a trip to Europe at 35 is likely to be more enjoyable than a trip at 75. The main reason is your physical ability at each of these ages. You're able to travel more quickly, see more things at age 35. You could hike to places you likely couldn't at age 75. You'll tire more easily when you're older, while these same dynamics happen when we look at age 60 versus age 75 as well. And so consider this when you build your retirement plan. You're likely going to want to front load your retirement with travel, experience, and activities, both because of the maximum enjoyment points, but also because tomorrow is never guaranteed. This will in turn mean that you're front loading some of that spending as well. Well, going back to our last example with the safety gap, your essential and discretionary budget together is very likely possible for that first decade. Now, in our last example, that combined spending goal had an 88% probability of success. And so if things go poorly, you aren't risking your discretionary budget in the first decade of retirement, but likely will be risking it in the later years of retirement. For many, taking this small risk might be worth it if you think in terms of maximum enjoyment points. Now, here's an unconscious trade that many end up making. They look at their retirement and the small amount of uncertainty in their plan, and they think, I'll just work a little bit longer, maybe a year or two, to try to eliminate that uncertainty. And look, working a couple more years will make your plan stronger. But at what cost? Well, what I believe these retirees are unknowingly doing is they're trading some of the best years that they have left for certainty in some of the worst years they have left in their life. And that's assuming they even live that long. When framed in this way, is that a good trade to be making? Number 4, what is the value of your time? This is one that I think some will disagree with, but I think many retirees undervalue their time. For most of our life, it's been driven into our head that our time is worth what the market is willing to pay us. In the year before retirement, it's very likely that you're worth more on a per hour basis than you've ever been worth before. Maybe you were making $75 per hour. During this period of your life, it's easy to look at things you don't like doing, like maybe mowing the lawn or cleaning your house or insert some other chore. Well, if you can pay someone $15 an hour to complete a chore that you hate and instead you worked, well, you just made a $60 spread. Economically, we know that makes a lot of sense. But if you think about the value of your time in this context, then once you retire, the situation flips on its head. What is your time worth now? No one is paying you and you have an abundance of time. Because of this, I often see retirees use this as an excuse to trade their jobs for a laundry list of chores that they need to accomplish on an ongoing basis. They don't like these chores, but they now have the time. Well, do you actually have the time? What if you thought about the value of your time in a different economic sense, and you valued your time based on the supply that you have left? Now, we all know that time is a non-renewable resource. We can't create any more of it. Money, however, is a renewable resource. If the supply of your time is ever shrinking, then I think you should value your time and the time you have left quite highly based on the supply. Pick and choose the places you want to pay for convenience, assuming that you have the financial capability to do so. This is not to say everybody should offload every chore. You may actually enjoy mowing your lawn. But I guess for many retirees, there are certain things that you're doing right now that you don't like to do, and you're using the excuse of you have the time to do it. Then the final idea is something called the Centenarian Decathlon. Let's bring this idea back to the marginal decade. There is a fantastic new book that just came out that a client recently sent to me. Again, by the way, thanks, Brett. It's called Outlive by Peter Attia. I highly recommend anyone focused on improving their health and longevity read this book. This book really stresses the idea of health span versus lifespan. Lifespan is obviously the hourglass leading to the end of our life. Health span, however, is the amount of time that we stay healthy within that lifespan. Most retirees follow a path where their health span declines well before their lifespan. And this is where the idea of that marginal decade comes in. As anyone who has struggled through disease or significant illness knows, there is no quality to life without reasonable health. Given this, I believe a retiree's main focus should shift towards their health. I'm not convinced there is a better ROI in life. I have two charts on the screen. The one on the left-hand side is a measure of something called your VO2 max by age and percentiles. Now, I know this is a graph that might be a little hard to read. Your VO2 max is a proxy for cardiovascular health. It essentially measures your maximum rate of oxygen consumption. Said another way, it's the top end of your cardiovascular abilities. Now again, I know the chart is hard to read, but the message doesn't require you to understand the specifics of this chart. Notice there is a downward trend as a person ages, regardless of if they were in the top decile or the bottom decile. But the reason I bring this up, if you can physically go for a 3-mile walk or hike right now at the age of 60, it's unreasonable to expect that your fitness will allow you to do this in 20 years from now without any additional work. Your health is on a downward trajectory, and only you can do anything to prevent it. To give an example for just how important cardiovascular health is, someone in the lowest decile of VO2 max has a 400% higher chance of all-cause mortality than someone in the top decile. This was found to be the case in multiple studies cited in this book. To put this in perspective in a different way, I have a chart from the book that I actually took a picture of on the right-hand side of the screen. This shows accidental deaths per 100,000 people. For 5 decades from your 20s to your 70s, accidental deaths stay pretty much flat, and this makes sense. Then when you look at 75 and 85 plus, you see a sharp increase primarily from what? Falling. Again, why is this the case? Aging degrades your body to the point that one misstep can literally turn into the end of your life. Now, many accept this as a fact of life. I'm simply not what I used to be. This book strongly pushes back against this idea and shows that it's ultimately a choice how fast you decline. your health span is a choice. And within this book, Peter Attia talks about an idea called the Centenarian Decathlon. Essentially, this is a list of things that you want to still be able to do in the last decade of your life. That doesn't have to mean when you're 100 years old, as Centenarian starts to lead you to. It could be what you want to do from ages 75 to 85. Now on the screen is an example for what this list might look like. Now yours might look different. This is something you should do on your own. Hike 1.5 miles on a hilly trail. Get off the floor under your own strength. Carry in a bag of groceries. Pick up your grandchild or great-grandchild. Have sex. Open a jar. Everyone that you talk to wants to be capable of doing each of these activities throughout their life. But this will not be possible without you putting in a little work. And so exactly as we would do in retirement planning, now that we have this goal of the Centenarian Decathlon, we want to start working backwards. What do we need to do today to accomplish that goal in the future? You won't accomplish a fraction of these tasks without intentionality. Put in the work now, reap the rewards throughout the remainder of your life. Now, the reason I share these ideas is because I think true holistic planning is more than just how do we make you the most money. Getting the most out of retirement is more than just how do we invest and grow at 10% per year rather than 8%. In fact, I think the idea of just trying to grow your wealth continuously so you never have a drawdown, so you never eat into that wealth, oftentimes is the wrong goal for most families. Now, what do I mean by that? If we're drawing down our assets, aren't we risking ruin? Well, you might be surprised to know that there is a different approach. You can click on this video to learn more. Now, keep in mind, this is what some would call a crazy approach, but one that I think would serve quite a few families. Thanks for watching, and always remember, you don't need more money, you need a better plan.